She pointed a gun at me in my own front yard, in broad daylight, no more than 10 feet away. Her hand shook, but her fingers stayed glued to the trigger. Behind her sat the wreckage of her custom pearl-white Lexus, $120,000 worth of luxury, now flattened like a soda can under the massive maple tree that had crashed down from my yard in last night's thunderstorm. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, phones already recording. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I just stood there with that quiet calm you learn after years of facing down real threats. Because this wasn't my first time staring down a barrel. The difference was the woman trembling in front of me wasn't some career criminal. She was the president of our homeowners association, the self-appointed ruler of Maplewood Estates, convinced her clipboard and bylaws made her untouchable. And she was about to learn a hard truth. Never aim at a man who used to run the Federal Bureau of Investigation. When I retired after 32 years with the Bureau, all I wanted was quiet. No more late-night calls from D.C., no more staring at surveillance feeds until my eyes burned, no more decisions that weighed lives. I pictured mornings with coffee on the porch, the smell of fresh-cut grass, and evenings where the biggest crisis was deciding what to grill for dinner. Maplewood Estates looked perfect on paper. Tidy cul-de-sacs in a Midwestern suburb outside Indianapolis. White fences, kids riding bikes, American flags on porches. It felt like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. The irony? Places obsessed with control breed their own kind of trouble. 2 days after I moved in, a typed notice appeared on my door. Welcome to Maplewood Estates. Please ensure all garbage cans are stored out of sight and match the approved charcoal gray. Violations subject to fines. Signed, Margaret Whitaker, HOA President. Margaret, mid-50s, sharp bob haircut, always in pastel golf shirts, didn't introduce herself with a handshake. She inspected my yard like a drill sergeant. That shrub needs trimming to regulation height, she said, measuring with her eyes. We maintain uniform appearance here. I smiled. Appreciate the welcome. I'll get to it. She didn't catch the dry tone. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. Over the next months, the notices piled up. Mailbox paint fading. Porch light exceeding brightness standards. My grandson's basketball hoop disrupting curb appeal when he visited. Each one hand-delivered by Margaret herself, always with that tight smile. I followed the rules, paid the dues, even sat through one meeting where she presided like royalty at the head table. Agenda items, shutter color disputes, complaints about holiday lights staying up past January 2nd. The room nodded as if these were life or death matters. I stayed silent, watching the dynamic. Margaret ruled through fear of disorder, the classic playbook of small-time tyrants. Then came Alexis, pearl white, custom rims, vanity plate, MW1. Every morning she polished it in her driveway. Humming like the car was her crown jewel. One afternoon, she caught me watching from my porch. Impressive, isn't it? She called. Hard to miss, I replied. Costs more than some houses around here, she bragged. I nodded and went back to my coffee. From that day, she marked me as trouble. The petty war escalated. Inspectors measuring my driveway slope claims my fence was half an inch too close to the line. When my daughter brought the grandkids for a weekend barbecue, a noise violation notice arrived for excessive laughter after 8 p.m. I dealt with mob bosses and terrorists. Nothing prepared me for suburban power plays and caprice. I kept records. Every notice, every email. Silence unnerves people like Margaret more than argument. Then the storm hit. Thunder like artillery, wind bending trees until they groaned. Lightning turned the street into a strobe show. Around 2 a.m., a crack like a gunshot. My century-old maple, roots deeper than the subdivision, tore free and fell. Straight across the property line, straight onto Margaret's driveway, straight on her Lexus. The hood buckled, windshield shattered, roof caved. Water streamed off the wreck like melted wax. By morning, the rain had stopped. Chaos remained, branches everywhere, puddles reflecting blue sky. Then her voice cut through. You, Margaret stormed over in her robe, face flushed. This is your fault. Your tree destroyed my car. Morning, Margaret, I said, sipping coffee. It was a storm. Insurance will handle acts of God. You knew that tree was a hazard. You neglected it. Past inspection last spring. Healthy. Strong. She jabbed a finger. You'll pay for a new one. Exact model, color, everything. I'm sure your insurer will enjoy that demand. She shrieked something inhuman and stormed off. The day became theater. Photos, phone calls, an impromptu curb meeting. By evening, a formal negligence notice slid under my door. I filed it with the rest. She called an emergency HOA hearing. Email blast. This resident endangers community safety. I attended. Old habit. She ranted about reckless disregard. I leaned forward. Margaret, stop before you say something irreversible. Or what? You'll file a report. I met her eyes. You'd be surprised what reports I can still file. The room shifted. She didn't know my past yet, but the air changed. Days later, her board arrived in matching polos, photographing the stump. Assessing community damage, one said. Community damage? I asked. The car's on her side of the line. Mrs. Whitaker believes your negligence. Of course she does. Margaret burst out. You'll replace it or face a lien. I smiled faintly. Threatened property law? Read up first. She escalated. Emails flooding the group chat, bulletins calling me a hazard, threats of expulsion. I forwarded everything to my evidence folder. Then contractors showed up to chop my tree without permission. I stepped out. Touch it and you're trespassing. HOA authorization, one muttered. Check the deed. My land. Margaret marched over. I pointed to my porch camera. You just said that on tape. Her face paled. That night, a handwritten note under my door. You've made a dangerous mistake. I'm not afraid. Desperate people get unpredictable. A dead squirrel appeared on my step next. Note attached. Leave while you can. I called an old friend, assistant director at the Bureau's Integrity Unit. Jim Harlan, he answered. Trouble in paradise? Local HOA president thinks she's above the law. Quiet background check. By morning, her file arrived. Margaret Whitaker had been treasurer in 2 prior HOAs. Fined for questionable accounting, settled quietly, then relocated. Patterns. I printed copies, left an envelope marked confidential, HOA board at the clubhouse. The neighborhood buzzed. Board members looked shaken. Margaret stormed my driveway. You smeared me. Fact from public records. Last chance. Drop the fines. Apologize publicly. We end this. Never. That night, motion lights triggered. Margaret in my yard. Pry my mailbox. Evening, I set flashlight on. Collecting evidence. You're on federal property. Mailbox tampering is a felony. Federal. She faltered. Not trying to scare you. Just stating facts. She retreated, cursing. Next morning, a small box on my porch. Inside, 1 bullet. She'd crossed into criminal. Tension built. Then, 9:17 a.m., her SUV screeched up. She jumped out, waving papers, face twisted. You spread lies. Forged documents. Public records. Verifiable. She reached into her purse. Metal glinted. My training kicked in. Heart slowed. Vision sharpened. A compact pistol. Amateur grip, shaking badly. Neighbors froze. Someone screamed. Margaret, I said quietly. Put down. You're making an irreversible mistake. You ruined everything, she shrieked. You're trembling. Finger slips, someone dies. Probably not me. She stepped closer. Muzzle 6 feet away. Apologize. I didn't ruin you. You met consequences. She fired. Into the air. Bang echoed. Birds exploded from trees. Car alarms wailed. I didn't move. Felony discharge in residential zone. She aimed again. Sirens. Blue and red lights flooded the street. 2 officers out, weapons drawn. Drop it. Now. She crumpled. Gun hit grass. Cuffs clicked. You're under arrest for brandishing and discharge. I'm the HOA president. Not anymore, I said. They drove her away, still shouting. The neighborhood changed overnight. Board resigned. Media swarmed. My old bureau contacts arrived quietly. They uncovered more. Embezzlement over $250,000 across states. kickbacks from a consultant named Victor Lang who sold enforcement solutions to HOAs. Federal charges. Accounts frozen. Margaret's bail denied. I testified. Judge's words. This was not self-defense. She went to prison. 6 months later, Maplewood Estates rebuilt. New board. Ordinary folks. A teacher, a mechanic, a nurse. Transparency rules. Monthly financials online. No outside enforcers without vote. Term limits. They held garden days, planted trees, shared tools. I planted a new maple where the old one stood. It took root strong. One day, a letter from prison. Jim, prison strips titles. I lost everything because I thought control was respect. Water that tree for me. Maybe something I broke can grow right. Margaret, I filed it away. Not as evidence, but as closure. The neighborhood felt lighter. Kids played freely. Porches hosted real conversations. Justice arrived not in drama, but in escrow papers, audits, and quiet replanting. Power built on fear collapses under truth. The community didn't need revenge. It needed honesty and shared responsibility. If you face your own version of this, overreach, bullying, or worse, tell me in the comments. What happened? How did you handle it? Especially on the hard parts. When does standing your ground cross into danger? When is force justified? And when does it destroy more than it protects? Share your thoughts. Your stories matter. Let's talk about power, fairness, and what real community looks like.